All right, testing, testing. Am I on? I never know with YouTube. It takes like a few seconds. Okay, that looks good. What about Odyssey? Hello, Odyssey. I think Odyssey is working too. Hard to tell. All right, how's everyone doing today?
I'm not seeing anyone in the chat yet. I'll refresh real quickly.
Yeah, I should do that. Nope, no one's in yet, but maybe they'll join us. So, how you doing, Chris?
Okay. These short days are killing me.
Short days weren't so bad if Heather wasn't closing all the time.
Yeah.
Her closing at night and then getting up at morning to get our daughter off to school.
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's all because of the government,
And so many studies they have done that all say that if they would just shift the start and end time of the school and all the subjects and everything, shifted an hour later, and the children have just so much better outcomes when you do that.
They've literally done studies like so many people are like, why won't my kids stop falling asleep at school? And they finally did some thorough studies and they found out, well, because it starts too damn early.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of schools start at like 7:30, which means in order to get breakfast and prepare, a lot of kids got to get up at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them with the bus routes, they get on the bus at like 6:30 or something like that, and they're on an hour bus ride or something. And
Who's
ooh,
practicing
I hear
trumpet?
music. I hear music when there's no one there. There is someone there. Sid, how you doing?
Hey. Hey, how you doing?
Okay, hang on. Let me turn down your mic because you're kind of hot there.
Are you playing a trumpet?
No, that might be my brother. I don't know. I'll mute myself temporarily.
That's okay. There was just a trumpet or something in the background. I'm just turning down your volume.
He's not a trumpet. It is a cornet.
It's a flugelhorn.
Yeah, I saw that somewhere where a person said, "Wow, you play the trumpet." It's like, no, it is not a trumpet. It's a cornet. Can't you tell the brass loop is shorter?
Yeah, cornets are shorter, and then the flugelhorn is the big one. I don't know if you remember that song. It's an instrumental. Feel so good. Ba da da, bum bum ba da, bum bum ba da. That's a flugelhorn. It's like just a trumpet with a bigger loop and then a larger bell.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of fuller, deeper sound to it.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos about music lately, and I saw this one funny video. It was called "Top 10 Really Good Musicians that are very popular to hate on," and you know who's one artist I'm surprised was on there? Kenny G. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, basically the reason why in the video itself pointed this out, basically the hatred for Kenny G comes down to snobbery. It's like, oh, he knows nothing about jazz and all that, and it's like
He was just a mediocre saxophone player. That's just, he wasn't terrible, but
yeah. But to be fair, and they
he
pointed
was.
this out.
Oh God, what was the guy's name? The saxophonist for Bruce Springsteen. I'm drawing a blank on his name. But he was good.
Well, the point that they try to make about Kenny G is that it's like, listen, yes, he's not like the quote unquote best saxophone player, but you know what? That's not what he's doing. It's adult contemporary smooth. It's not meant to be like complicated and old fashioned. It's meant to be music to relax to and set the mood.
Oh yeah, it's easy listening. Clarence Clemens, that was the guy I was thinking of.
Yeah, people need to realize that just like art, that just like paintings and all that, music doesn't have to be complicated and test your mind.
Well, I mean, there's music for the background. There's music to jam to. There's music to sit and listen to. There's music for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, fun fact, I've actually heard an art teacher say that there's some types of classical music that if it causes you to yawn and want to fall asleep, that doesn't mean it's boring. It actually means it's doing its job. Because some of those
Yep.
classic songs, the whole point of them is to make you relax and calm, you know.
Well, you got to remember, with no TV or anything like that, they just had to go out. And concerts were like an all afternoon and into the evening affair.
Yeah.
And nowadays, where we'd have, the finale be this big, loud, rousing thing, the very last thing they play would be this nice, soothing thing to calm people down and get them yawning so they can go home and go to bed.
Yep.
All sorts of music, even what they call absolute music, which is just music for its own sake. It's not about anything. And that's that's the kind of point I make to critics of non-objective art, which is art that doesn't resemble anything. I say, well, what's the point then? It's like, why does it have to resemble anything? And it's like, well, it has to because it's a painting. It's like, well, does music have to resemble anything, or can music just be music? And they'll say, well, music can just be music. Well, so can a painting. It's not for the sake of anything else. It's for its own sake.
Yeah.
No drop frames so far, and I believe I'm simulcasting, so not seeing any chats yet.
Yeah, Shane,
Okay,
you ever heard
over.
you ever heard the most unwanted song?
No, I haven't.
Oh, apparently I'm looking it up. It's a song by Komar and Melamid. I think that's how you pronounce their names, and it's deliberately meant to be the worst song ever, and it's meant to combine music and lyrical elements that are meant to be annoying, and it includes a bagpipe solo, cheesy country music, an opera singer rapping, and a children's choir that urges you to go to Walmart.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, and it basically, it's deliberately meant to be a bad song, but it's done deliberately.
Yeah. Bad on purpose.
Yeah.
As opposed to the best country song ever. We heard that one. Rainbow Asteroids. If you want to make the most annoying song, make virtue signaling lyrics. I think a lot of them have.
Yeah.
Who's got their bleepies going?
Speaking of which, what are your thoughts on national anthems? As in, which ones are like the best and worst?
They shouldn't exist.
Shouldn't
That's
exist?
my position on them. Especially it's like a Pledge of Allegiance. What's a free country doing with a Pledge of Allegiance? We got by until, what wasn't it, like the 30s or the 1930s or 40s or something like that before we had a national anthem.
Yeah.
It hasn't actually been that long.
I think you mentioned that, that even before that we did have a national anthem. It just wasn't official. It was just something that people would sing like in Independence Day. Well,
there were different songs for different purposes, and because you have like America the Beautiful and Hail Columbia and all of those things, and they were just patriotic songs that people sang. Like today we have God Bless the USA and others like that. And I mean, you always had official music for certain things, like you play Hail to the Chief when the president comes out, things like that. But it's just weird to me, though, that the more horrible and totalitarian the government, the better the anthem is musically. I mean, like the Soviet anthem, musically speaking, is like, orders of magnitude above ours.
Yeah. What about the Polish national anthem? They're not a dictatorship, and they've got a pretty good good national anthem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard it said somewhere that when Germany reunified, Germany should have taken the West's economics but kept the East's anthem. I've heard the East
Yeah.
anthem, former East German anthem. It ain't bad.
Oh yeah, the Chinese anthem, I'll admit, is pretty
Oh
nice.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Ours was never really meant to be an anthem. They just took the poem Defense of Fort McHenry and jammed it into, Anacreon in Heaven and tried to make it fit.
Yeah.
Which it
I
doesn't really,
remember-
especially if you get into like the second and third verses, they don't fit. That's why no one sings them, they don't fit.
I actually remember reading somewhere that even when the Star Spangled Banner was announced to be the national anthem, there was actually a lot of people from musicians saying it's like, no, that's to be the anthem,
Yeah.
A lot of people were saying Hail Columbia or America the Beautiful should have been the anthem, but for some reason the Star Spangled Banner got the choice.
People were criticizing it because the tune is actually a British drinking song, and it's like we were kicking out the British.
Yeah.
I like the sound of the Chinese propaganda song Red Sun in the Sky. I mean, I like the way it sounds, even if it's a song in honor of the most murderous man in history.
It's weird. It's like the one thing that communist countries do well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I said it to you, but the Polish national anthem is pretty good, and they're not tyrannical. In fact, Poland's national anthem was actually banned by the Communist Party. Because, I don't know how to pronounce it in its Polish, but it translates to Poland has not yet fallen, and basically it's about resisting tyrants, basically, because for many years Poland wasn't an independent nation. It was divided between 3 different European empires.
Have you seen the video Alternate History Hub made on national anthems? I mean, it's a pretty good video.
No, I haven't.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it's a pretty good channel, and in that video, he just goes over the history of anthems and which ones are the best and worst, and how each region has like a theme. Like, for example, Latin America, most anthems are about, I guess, overthrowing the Spanish or something.
Yeah.
How Liechtenstein's anthem is pretty much the same as Great Britain's.
Wasn't the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance, wasn't it ironically written by a socialist?
Oh yeah, it was about indoctrinating people to socialism. Yeah.
Yeah, Francis Bellamy.
Bellamy, yeah.
Yeah.
The same guy who was trying to, and Edward Bellamy too, trying to get the schools under government control.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have government-run schools before then.
Yep. Also,
they got the states involved, and then the Fed started getting involved like 100 years later or something.
Yep. Also, people, if you want some interesting tricks in history, look up the Bellamy salute. Believe it or not, historically, that actually used to be the proper way to salute the U.S. flag until World War II.
People wrongly call it the Roman salute, but there's no evidence the Romans ever used that salute.
From what I heard, it wasn't from Rome. However, from what I also understand, that was actually a very common salute back in those days. Basically, it suffered the same fate as the swastika. It had different meanings and was used by many different people long before the Nazis came along. But because it was used by them, it's suddenly evil. Yeah, now it's evil. Though it's funny, though, because if I recall correctly, more people were tortured and killed under the hammer and sickle than the swastika, but the hammer and sickle's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's commies all over YouTube with that one.
Yeah.
And also they filled academia with their youthful idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was how they did it. They couldn't get success. The Socialist Party couldn't get success in elections, and so they basically took over academia.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wish I could draw because I had an idea for like a short series that would kind of be like The Far Side, but a little bit more political. And one idea I had was for historical idiots, which is where a historical person explains their point of view to something, and a modern person says how stupid it is. And one idea I had was for one of the scientists who gave the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union, and when the character asks, "Well, why would you do that?" It's like, well, what if America becomes fascist? They'll use the atomic bomb and they'll kill innocent people. And the guy goes, so to keep the balance of power and world peace, you're going to give the most dangerous weapon ever invented to humankind to a man who killed more people than all three Axis powers combined.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
were you referring to again?
It was well, there was a lot of them, but it was those scientists that sold the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union, and the real reason they did it, in my honest opinion, was because they were communists. But if they said that, that pretty much would have been a death sentence because it was the 1950s. So instead, they said, "Oh no, it wasn't because we were communists and we wanted the Holy Land of the Soviet Union to still exist. It was because we were afraid the United States would become fascists and they would use the atomic bomb to kill people." Yeah, and those guys, they did not bring the balance of power. All they created was an arms race.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which probably would have happened anyway.
Yeah. I actually had an idea for a short story where it takes place in a history in like the 2010s, where a nuclear war has destroyed most of the world. So a guy wanting to prevent that has an idea. He goes back because there's a time machine. He goes back in time. He steals 2 hydrogen bombs plus a bomber from the 1960s. Then he goes back in time, and he basically tells the scientists, "Here's what you guys got to do. You got to quit. You got to destroy all your research in science, and you got to do everything in your assurance to make sure that atomic bomb never makes it to the Soviet Union." And they say, "Well, what if we refuse and we still make the bomb anyway?" He says, "Well, if you give the bomb to the Soviet Union, then I'm going to give these hydrogen bombs and my bomber to Hitler." Yep, and it gets into a
Mhm.
debate, and I even have an idea of how it's going to end. It's going to end with 1940, where during the London Blitz, where the British detect a German bomber coming on the way, but they notified that it looks bigger than normal, and it's a bomber they don't recognize, implying the scientists didn't heed his warning.
But I mean, that was always the fear they acknowledged. They had to develop the atomic bomb so that the Nazis wouldn't first, and then even after World War II, we need to develop bigger and better bombs before the Russians figure out how to do it. So I mean, even without all the spies and everything, it was just a matter of time before they figured it out.
Eh. Although I do think the world would be a much more different place if one of the allies was nuked instead of Japan, because one of the reasons why so many people dismiss the destructive nature of atomic bombs was because it was done on Japan, and the attitude at the time was, "Oh, Japan's a small nation, they of course they're going to suffer devastation from an atomic bomb. There's no way a great nation like the United States or Russia would be phased by a couple of nuclear weapons." Whereas if like England or France had been nuked, the attitude would have been, "Hell no, we are not using those weapons, and they should never be developed."
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought the Nazis weren't interested in creating nukes. I mean, maybe they weren't, but that was the excuse that was used.
Yeah.
Because once you demonstrate that you have it, and once everyone else knows that it's possible, that gets you a long way towards actually figuring out how to do it.
Yeah. In all honesty, I've actually remember reading that Dr. Strangelove, that was kind of the whole point, of the nuclear weapon system the Soviet Union developed that can destroy everything. It was making fun of that stuff, It was making fun of all that bull crap, It's like, we're gonna develop a top secret weapon that can blow up an entire continent. Okay, why are you building a weapon like that? Well, so we can scare off the enemy from not attacking us. But you're keeping it a secret. What if they
Yeah.
don't know about it?
They have to
Yeah.
know what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember that scene. Yeah, and the ex-German doctor says that that system would only work only if your enemies knew about it. And the only thing the KGB officer can say is, well, you know how the premier likes surprises.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he calls them saying, hey, listen, Mr. Premier, there's a rogue US Air Force, guy, planning to nuke Russia, if we can't stop him, please do not retaliate. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, we automated the system. Yeah,
But if you've ever wondered, in 2001, when Moonwatcher, throws up the bone and you follow it up into space, and then it cuts to, that little orbiter. If you ever wondered what that was, it was a nuclear platform. And the idea was that by 2001, both the Russians and the Allies had these, nukes in orbit that threatened the destruction. And Stanley Kubrick had just come off of Doctor Strangelove and was just fed up with that sort of thing and decided to take it out of the movie. But that was supposed to add tension to the conversation that Floyd was having with the Russians.
Yeah. It's pretty funny because so many people try to justify nuclear weapons and all that, and it's like, I have an interesting strategy. Now, it sounds crazy, but I think it might have worked on Japan. You know what that is? Oh, really? What is it? Stop demanding an absolute unconditional surrender.
Yeah, just accept the surrender they were offering. Let Hirohito stay on the throne, because he did anyway.
Yeah. Well, the argument I hear from a lot of people, especially in the historical context, is that, it's like, oh, but if we do that, the people will just, develop another stab in the back myth like they did in the First World War, and the war will continue again. It's like, I kind of doubt that would happen. It's like, okay, maybe it happened at the end of World War I, but come on, let's be real here. The Nazis encouraged 2 wars, and let's assume the Western and Eastern Allies, did just that. They just kicked the Germans out of the soil, but they didn't pursue it any further. How are you going to rile up the people for another war?
Yeah, Rainbow, like, mutually assured destruction. All it ever did was mean proxy wars, which we have another one right now, so. That's all it is, folks. A proxy war and money laundering. That's what we're doing over there.
Yeah.
So a guy does a money laundering thing that doesn't even have to be done with crypto. He could have done it at any point. And everyone's like, oh, well, then we don't punish FTX. We got to ban all of crypto now. We got to regulate it. And it's like,
oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, they're using FTX as proof, that cryptocurrency is a scam, even though everything he did with cryptocurrency can easily be done with regular cash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even like, it was an exchange and a derivatives market. And so what does that have to do with actual crypto, which is, holding your funds in a non-custodial wallet? There was a really funny Reason TV from years ago, and it was, I forget what it was, one of those what should have happened, and it was a cryptocurrency conference they were having. One of the subcommittees or whatever was happening. It was really funny. Well, one part that stands out, what's his name? Not Andrew Heaton, the other one, Austin Bragg. So one of the House members asked this crypto guy, is like, what sort of threat does quantum computing have to crypto? And Austin says, that's a weirdly good question. And the other guy saying, well, we'll just have to see what happens on that. That's a weirdly bad answer. Funniest one is what should have happened to the GameStop hearing. They were all calling it GameStock instead of GameStop. Why is the only guy who's making sense in a gaming chair? And you have that line from Andrew Heaton. It's like, hey, maybe the reason why we're all investing in stocks is because, you guys have printed so much money, no one can save anything. And if we did, it would be eaten up by inflation. So either fix that or shut the fuck up. Be awesome if someone actually said that in testimony.
Yeah. So they'd probably be thrown out for a lack of decorum.
Yeah. Whereas the senators and House members can have, as little decorum as they want, as much non-decorum, whatever the opposite of that is, and
Sorry,
nothing
I
happens
went away
to
to
them.
the bathroom. What were you guys talking about?
Oh, just those like Senate subcommittee meetings and everything.
Subcommittee meetings and a committee for the subcommittee.
Yeah. Where they have the meetings to talk about regulating this or that. And we got to regulate crypto, even though none of us have the first clue how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, the government loves to regulate what they don't understand.
Yeah, just look at their history of gun control.
What was that Reagan said? If it moves, tax it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. If it keeps moving, regulate it.
It's kind of like what Pipsqueak said about traffic regulations. It's like if you're driving above the speed limit, you're speeding. If you're driving below the speed limit, you're obstructing traffic.
Oh yeah.
In traffic.
Yeah, because that was an actual thing that was brought up in the Discord. Someone who was pulled over for obstructing traffic because she was going 10 miles under the speed limit while accelerating to the speed limit.
Yep. And I like that third one that he said. And if you're driving the exact speed limit, well, I don't know. But the cop will think of something to ticket you for.
Your taillight's out.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Because there was one where they actually, it's on YouTube, but it was this whole thing that just escalates and leads to the guy getting arrested and everything else because, he didn't want him to search his car and he knew it was right now. They ended up arresting him. And the whole pretext for pulling him over was that his turn signal was out. But according to the dash cam footage, it shows clearly when the guy made the turn, his turn signal was working.
Yeah.
So the whole reason for pulling him over for failure to signal was a lie.
Yeah. Or they do like that scene in Porky's. It's like, oh yeah, and by the way, you're also getting fined because you're driving a car with a broken light. But my light's not broken. Now it is. And
then when they finally get back at him, they even smash the hood ornament. It's a $50 fine, broken hood ornament.
Yeah.
Anyone remember hood ornaments? It's been a while since cars have had those.
Another thing too that I hear about, with your taillights out is even if it is I'm pretty sure what if the person knows, his taillights out and he's on his way to get it fixed.
Well, that's why they're just supposed to get you a warning.
Yeah.
But then they get up to your car and go, I smell marijuana or something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretext.
Yep. I even posted that in that video you did about I smell marijuana. It's like in drug traffic jogs. It's like, and I said, yep. And what happens when you bring up, that it's like, listen, I smell marijuana is not a justifiable excuse. If you want to search my car, you're going to have to get a warrant. What happens if you say that? You're under arrest for obstruction of government authority.
Yep.
And that's actually happened to people. There's literally
or they'll arrest you for resisting arrest. It's like, well, what was I being arrested for? That's irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah, if I recall correctly, obstruction or resisting arrest can only be a crime only if there's actually an arrest warrant for you, or if they actually have a warrant, for something that you have to turn in and you destroy
Judges
it.
let them do it. Judges let them do it.
Oh yeah.
They're politicians in robes, remember.
Yep.
And just look at how they easily, dismiss the cases when, there's a real problem now, just leftist judges everywhere just throwing out these, cases right and left when it's against, it is for someone on the left. But then as soon as it's someone they don't like, oh, Alex Jones said some bad things that he probably should be forced to pay them a little for, but what is it now? $3 trillion?
Yeah. They might as well just say we all agree to find Alex Jones $500 bazillion.
$1 billion, zillion, trillion dollars. Plus one.
Yeah. Sadly, even a YouTuber who I used to like, Telltale Atheist, even he's falling for it. Like he said, finally Alex Jones is brought to justice. It's like,
how was that justice?
Yeah. It's like,
how is blatantly violating your 8th Amendment right? No, 7th?
And that's another thing too.
One,
like he was
no, 6th. No, 7th Amendment right. I was getting my amendments wrong.
Yeah,
how is blatantly violating your 7th Amendment rights justice?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he even fell, for the myth, that it's like, but he was also, not cooperative with the court and all. It's like, no, he was cooperative. The problem is that
who else turned over as much discovery in anything as Alex Jones did?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, you brought this up, when reviewing the case. It's like, the reason why he was quote unquote not cooperating was because every time he kept, doing what they did on time, they kept altering the rules, that were basically impossible to follow. And then they're like, oh, you didn't obey the rules. You're not cooperating.
It's the same bullshit they did to Remington.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you do think, he deserved, some punishment, he shouldn't be owing, more than the GDP of most countries.
No, yeah. Honestly, have a proper trial. Let him have a jury trial, and then if the jury decides that he's liable, then go to damages and have a proper damages trial. But God, that was a circus.
Yeah. Honestly, I read one interesting fact that I kind of agree with, and they think that, and it says there's one way we can stop all this serverless stuff, and you know what? That's what we need to do. We need to basically have a rule in the Constitution that says courts are only for criminals and contract disputes. Everything else, figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Hire a mediary, whatever. Which, to be fair, that's what most people do. Most quote unquote, bad acts, aren't, settled out in the court. They're settled out, through contractual mediary, basically.
Through arbitration. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It's cheaper, it's faster, and you just get better results with it. And basically, as soon as you get into court, the expenses go through the roof. So,
yeah. Fun fact. A lot of those judge TV shows like Judge Judy. Even though yes they are judges, they're actually not acting as judges within the context of the show. Rather, they're being a mediator. Yeah, they're being a mediator, and
they're arbitrators.
Yeah, they're arbitrators, and basically the only difference is that they're being filmed, because a lot of stuff like that happens all the time,
Well, and what happens is they're paid for their appearances.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, if a losing party has to pay, $2,000, they just deduct $2,000 from the amount they pay him and add the $2,000 to the amount they pay the others. So.
Yeah.
None of them are losing money.
Yeah.
Of course, it's all small claims anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, best advice I got from my law teacher is avoid talking to the cops as much as possible. Yep, unfortunately. Yeah, that's why.
Never talk to the cops without a lawyer.
Yeah.
They always say I forget what it is, but there's like 3 things they can ask you your name, and you have to tell them your name, and there's like 2 others.
Yeah.
Other than that, say nothing. Hello, Cold Ramen.
Here's another interesting advice I've heard all the time. If a police officer ever pulls you over and they ask you, why I pulled you over, sir? It's like, even if you know it's because you're speeding and all that, don't say anything. Say, no, officer, why did you pull me over?
Yeah, make them tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, even if you know for a fact that you were speeding, the burden of proof is on him, is on the officer, not you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if they tell you you're speeding, they have to show you the radar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of
That's another
course,
thing
that
too.
doesn't necessarily mean your car was the one it was pointed at. But
Yeah. The only problem is, though, and unfortunately, this is a sad reality. The reason why you kind of have to, be compliant with police officers, as we just said earlier, the sad reality is that if you try to exercise your rights, there's way too many police departments out there that interpret as upholding your rights as being violent and resisted.
yep.
So,
Well, and they're even resisting things like for years, people have been trying to say, okay, you got the radar guns, put a camera with a zoom lens on the radar gun so that we can see exactly which car it was pointed at when it went off. And the cops and the state troopers and the higher ups that are so dead set against it. Well, why? If they're actually pulling over the right cars, why would they have a problem with that?
well, they gotta get those ticket quotas in somehow. Yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst kept secret in police departments. Even though they're not allowed to, and in some places they're banned, they do it all the time.
Oh yeah,
Many,
yeah, they do it.
yeah, many, yeah,
but
many.
but a lot of times, what? Because a lot of times you have the YouTubers who do the car things, and they'll have like a couple angle, one on them and one on the dash, and they're going like 55 or whatever the speed limit is, and the cop pulls them over, and here's the radar 65, but they bring the video in the court that shows they were going 55, and it's like what's apparently happening is that there is a speeder, and they clock this guy at 65 or 75 or whatever he's going, but they pull over this guy because he's going slower and he's easier to catch.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Well, and another reason too why they do this is because it's a money making thing, because
it's for raising revenues and no other purpose.
Yep.
It does not make us safer.
Yeah, that's why I can't take the defund the police movement seriously, because it's like, people, even if you eliminate, like, you basically say, we'll still have a police department, but the state will no longer pay them. That's not the only way police departments make money. The majority of their money is through tickets and civil asset forfeiture. And in all honesty, I think that's what's going to happen if, some of these cities do take the defund the police. It's going to be like, yay, the police are no longer being funded by our taxpayer dollars. Wait a minute. Why are we getting all these tickets?
Don't defund the police, just give them less to do.
Yeah.
That's what they're, because, in states where marijuana is legal, they can't do the I smell marijuana thing.
Yeah.
And then the drug. So, I mean, if you make all of that legal and say, okay, cops, you're not doing that anymore, you got to focus on real criminals.
Yeah.
Then you take that power away from them.
Yeah.
But when you make things crimes that aren't real crimes, that's what happens.
Yeah. Fun fact about not paying attention, to real crimes and instead looking for tickets. The Foundation for Economic Freedom did a YouTube short about this, because there was there's that new documentary about Jeffrey Dahmer that everyone's talking about, and they brought up, it's one thing that documentary did that very few Jeffrey Dahmer documentaries talk about, is that the police could have stopped Dahmer long before he started his murder spree, but they did nothing.
Oh yeah, same with FTX, same with Bernie Sanders, same with all sorts of things.
Yeah. I mean, they pointed that out. There were neighbors, that were saying, I think this Dahmer guy, I think he's doing stuff illegal, and they even brought evidence, and the police was like, yeah, we'll look at it. And the most damning one of all was that incident where one of Jeffrey Dahmer's, victims, actually escaped and was running around naked, screaming, "Help me! This guy Dahmer's trying to kill me!" And what did the cops do? Dahmer told them, "Oh yeah, he's my gay lover. He had too much to drink and he's freaking out. Sorry." And what did they do? They're just like, okay, whatever. Go ahead.
Twidget is not showing up for some reason, but I'm trying to. Rainbow Asteroid says, I was tailgated by a state trooper when I was going the speed limit. That's what they'll do, especially if they're in an unmarked car. They'll tailgate you and ride you and try to, get you to go above the speed limit. And if you get afraid and go above the speed limit, they pull you over. That's entrapment. I have no idea how they get away with that, but it's entrapment.
Yeah, the sad reality with entrapment is that, because like you said, the burden of proof is on the person. And if you try to file an entrapment charge, the problem is that the police, are one of the few criminals that can legally get away with hiding evidence. So,
Yeah, they generally won't pull you over cold ramen for 5 miles over, but a lot of places, if you do the speed limit, you will get people like tailgating you for real.
Yeah.
So everyone knows the speed limits are set way too low.
Yeah.
I mean, traffic engineers say that if you have speed limits at all, set it at the 85th percentile, which they don't. They set it way lower than that.
Yeah.
But it's still the case where if they change the speed limit or even remove speed limits entirely, it doesn't really change the speed everyone's going.
Yeah,
But there are actually fewer accidents and fatalities when you do that.
Yeah, fun fact, and we brought this up. There's a lot of European areas that don't have, set speed limits and not as much, traffic signs, and we don't see people crashing into each other all the time.
Well, Montana, for several years until the Montana Supreme Court somehow was able to tell them to put it back, they took out all speed limits on their state highways and rural roads, and they only had speed limits in cities. You can go whatever speed you wanted for like 8 or 9 years until the Supreme Court made them put speed limits back up, in which case it made it 80 or something like that. But they've done studies of Montana during that time as compared to the time before, and when you consider per mile driven, the number of cars on the road and the number of miles they went, accidents and fatalities went down massively after they did that.
Yeah.
And this was right after they repealed the federally mandated 55, and states were raising theirs to 75 or 80 or whatever. And Montana said, we're just not going to have them. But I have no idea how the Supreme Court can say, no, you have to have speed limits.
Yeah.
That's interpretation of the Constitution for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, believe it. Well, I mean, you mentioned this before too. It's like there was one of the reasons why the alcohol limit is only 21, even though many people agree that's largely too high and it's kind of stupid. The only reason that did is because, believe it or not, there actually is nothing stopping states from getting rid of it. It's just that the federal government said, you can set your drinking limit at whatever you want. However, if it's anything below 21, we're not going to give you federal highway funding.
Yeah, it's something like 15% of the federal highway funds they lose.
Yeah. And you brought this up. That probably wouldn't have happened if the U.S. didn't have that amendment that basically said people can vote for senators now.
17th Amendment, yeah, because before 1913 was a really bad year, because that was also the year the Income Tax Amendment and the year they created the Federal Reserve. But so before then, senators were appointed by state legislatures, and they would never have put up with Congress going, state legislatures, you have to do this, even though we have no constitutional mandate to make it. They go, no, okay, you're not a senator anymore. You're out of there.
People fail to realize the whole point of the Senate not being elected directly by the people. That was to balance it out. The whole point of the House of Representatives was to represent the people, and the Senate was supposed to represent the state as a whole, and they were to keep each other in line, that way, if the Senate, said, oh yeah, all states, should pass this law and ban this object, the House would be there to say, no, the people won't take it, and vice versa. If, something happens and the people and the representatives are saying, oh, people, want these damn video games to be banned because they're causing all this stuff, the Senate's there to say, no, that's a waste of time and resources and we shouldn't be doing that. But we don't have that balance anymore.
Nope. And look at how powerful senators are now, and look at how much crap they can do.
Yeah.
The only problem I always had with the state legislature thing is I agree with it in principle. It's just the way both sides gerrymandered their state legislatures so hard now. Like I don't.
Well, yeah,
I don't
they've always
trust
done that.
them to.
Yeah.
Right. So like if they weren't if they didn't have first past the post and there wasn't like gerrymandering, I would agree. That's just the only issue I have with that. Yes.
But I mean that's not relevant when it comes to the legislatures appointing the senators.
Well, I'm assuming because legislatures are also partisan, right? Like,
well, they gerrymander the legislatures too, yeah.
Right. So I'm worried there would be like an indirect. I don't know if that's the correct phrasing, but like an indirect gerrymandering of the Senate almost if that happened. Right. So like I would want to address.
I mean, it is true that it is true that gerrymandering is the one thing you don't have to worry about with the Senate because it's done by state.
Yeah.
Right, but the state legislature, if it's gerrymandered, then So like, yeah, I don't know. That's the only thing.
Well, you know,
Gerrymandering gets crazy because I'm from North Carolina, and the gerrymandering we had up until a few years ago was like the stuff of legend. Every time someone wrote a story on really bad gerrymandering, at least 3 of the districts they used were from North Carolina, and there was this one that was specifically this crinkly little thing that basically followed I-85 that was drawn solely so that Mel Watt could be elected to the House. And so the Republicans, that was drawn by Democrats. Republicans get into the House and they redraw the districts. Yeah, they're gerrymandered. They're not as ridiculous as they were, but they're still kind of gerrymandered. So when the Democrats complain about the gerrymandering, and you kind of think, well, okay, they're complaining about the actual gerrymandering they were doing. No, they were talking about things like getting rid of that crazy I-85 district, because getting rid of that meant that, you didn't have as many. It was a racial gerrymandering. It was drawn specifically, for Mel Watt, who was black. And so, they got rid of that because you're not allowed to do racial gerrymandering. Well, they're saying that getting rid of that and not basing it on the race is racial gerrymandering. They're just trying to do the opposite.
Right.
You know,
I mean, they have to do that, though, because when you're in federal court, really about the only thing you can complain about with the district drawing is the racial gerrymandering. Partisan gerrymandering, the federal courts don't have jurisdiction over that. That's the state courts that's supposed to do that.
The thing I always get confused about is I understand a lot of parts of the Constitution, but one thing I never got was why the founders, why the founders decided state legislatures could make their own maps for their own chambers. Like that's the thing I never understood.
The way it's set up is the beginning of all political power in the United States is the states. The people of a state get together and form a government that's their state government that has its own constitution and its own courts and everything else that does all of these things. Those states come together to make a compact that's the United States Constitution that creates the federal government. And in doing so, they give up some of their powers to the government and some of their abilities, and they agree they're not going to infringe on certain rights and things like that. But it's still the source of all political power is states formed by the people. That's the theory, at least.
Yeah. Well, and you have to. Can I just say this real quickly? Another thing.
My bad.
Another thing you have to remember too is that the Constitution, in its current form, wasn't very popular among people, mainly because it was a compromise. Anyone who studied history.
Well, it was more than just a compromise. A lot of it was done in secret, and the Federalists were really taking a lot more for themselves than people wanted. All the people wanted them to do is just make some revisions to the Articles of Confederation to do things like stop states from inflating the money supply and a few other problems that were there, which they could have done much easier, but they didn't have to go throw it out and write a whole new thing.
I think my question was more pertaining to, I understand that part. I think my question was more pertaining to why would you let members of a chamber write their own, rewrite their own districts? That just seems like a recipe to get gerrymandering. If you wanted gerrymandering, that would literally be it. I don't know. That's the only thing, because if you think about it, if your party gains a majority in the legislature and the Constitution grants you the power to write your own district, why the hell wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you rewrite the districts?
Well, the courts the courts are supposed to be the balancing factor there. And if they draw the districts unfairly, the state courts are supposed to say, no, wait, you can't do that. But the federal courts are very limited by Article 3.
Another way I think, you can, I mean, it won't be a cure-all, but it will definitely, reduce, the influence of gerrymandering is we keep the electoral college, for both the federal and, the state governments, but we don't have the winner takes all system,
Rainbow Asteroid says math should be the one to write districts, not representative of the bipartisan committees. There's a website where you can do that. I'd have to find it again, but I was playing around with it with the North Carolina districts. And you can just have it write these nice little almost circular districts, or you can do things, and there are very good reasons to respect the county borders when you're doing this. So you can say, okay, keep county borders as much as you can, but draw the districts. And it draws very different districts than either party of the legislature has.
Well, I mean, you know, and you brought this up earlier about gerrymandering. Some of those shapes that gerrymandering is just ridiculous. Like, I mean, there's that one district, I can't remember where it is, but it's like there's two really large bodies, and then they're connected by this one teeny tiny little sliver.
Oh, yep,
Right.
yep, they've done that.
Yep.
Because they have to be contiguous, but they'll send like this really thin thing out, or
Yeah.
they'll just have things that come to a corner and then back out.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's so funny because it's like some of the areas that are connecting them, they're like, oh yeah, this is continuous. We have to make sure, you know, this is there when, and hardly anyone lives there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my biggest issue with all this is I feel like gerrymandering wouldn't even be as big of a problem if we had like the way the founders used to do it, the way America used to do it in the beginning, which was they didn't have like districts, right? They had like, what was it like? It was like proportional.
It was all at
Like, they had
large.
states.
It was all at
Yeah, it
large.
was all at large, which like I mean probably had its problems, but I assume would be significantly better than what we do now, which is like which is so prone to gerrymandering and all these other issues.
Yeah, people would vote, and then like the first, and however many districts it was, like North Carolina has 13 congressional districts. It wouldn't have been 13 at the time, but anyway,
Right.
you would just write down, you would vote for the candidates, and then the top 13 vote getters would get in.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is at districter.org. No E, it's districtr.org. Let me see if this is the one. Oh, yeah, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Draw districts.
Speaking
North
of
Carolina's map as sorry, go ahead.
Speaking about, gerrymandering and moving and all that, here's some advice for people who are fleeing California. Stop bringing your Californian ideas to other states.
Yeah, you're leaving it for a reason.
See,
Maybe
the interesting thing is, sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say maybe they're following that rule from that season 2 episode of South Park, with the film festival where it's like, wait a minute, why are we trying to turn all these little towns into terrible places like Los Angeles? And he's like, because we live in Los Angeles, which is smelly, crowded, and terrible. And if we can't live in small, quiet mountain communities, then no one can.
There's also districtbuilder.org is another.
Yeah.
See, the interesting thing, Darth, is actually like if you look at the people that leave California and go to like these states, I was actually looking at, of course, exit polling is unreliable and stuff, but like I was looking, for example, at the 2018 like Texas Senate race or whatever, just giving an example. If people that were born in Texas, if only people that were born and lived in Texas had voted, it would have replaced Ted Cruz with his Democratic opponent. But among the people that moved to Texas, it was something like a double-digit margin for Ted Cruz, the Republican, right? So it's not like I don't even think it's like necessarily that like these people are just progressives who like, oh, they hate California, but like, I'm still going to be progressive. I think those people are staying in California. I think it's more the like conservative right-wing expats who like can't stand the state and they want to move to a more conservative state. At least that's what I've observed, at least. So
Well, I mean, some Californian politicians, offered a perfectly rational, proposal, which was listen, California's a mess, and there's all the solutions. So I have an idea. Let's just divide California into 4 different states, so that way each group of people can be represented by their own thing. But the Sacramento politicians went ree.
Yeah, all of the ones on the, because if you look at the heat map, the red and the blue areas, the blue areas is just like right along the coast from like San Francisco, Sacramento, all the way down to like San Jose. Everything else is pretty red.
Yeah.
Or at least
right,
purple.
But the red areas have far fewer people, right?
Same thing.
Yeah, but that's it. It's the urban-rural divide. Just by nature, if you're going to go democracy, majority vote first past the post and all of that, it's going to be the urban areas who have all the power.
Right.
That's actually why, and I'm sorry, people, and you can argue with this till the cows come home, but it's a very bad idea. Washington, D.C. should not become a state.
No.
Yeah.
Because it was never supposed to be a population area. But I mean, if you look at history, originally Washington, D.C. was a square because the Constitution allows them to have a seat that's 10 miles by 10 miles. So that's how it was originally. I think it was when secession happened. They kind of cut that Virginia part off and that became Arlington. And now DC is just the rest of the square that used to be a part of, why am I blanking on things tonight? But anyway, Maryland, when that was not supposed to be a population center, but you got people living there. If that's a problem and those people need state representations, then take those population centers and make them a part of Maryland again, and make them a city in Maryland, right. And then just leave DC for, Capitol Hill and all the monuments and the Smithsonian and everything, all the actual federal stuff. But, the only people who live there would be, part-time because, that's where the president lives, the vice president lives. I think the vice president is actually in Arlington where the Navy building is. But anyway, the ones who are just living there part-time, but they wouldn't be official residents. It would be official residents of their home district.
Yeah.
What about Puerto Rico?
That's more complicated.
There's debates even among Puerto Ricans. Guam is the same way. Every so often that comes up. Should Guam become a state? Should Puerto Rico should American Samoa become a state? And the people are just so divided that they never even end up, I think, doing a referendum on it.
Yeah, I mean, because I've seen videos with people like from Puerto Rico in those areas, and it's like, because it's like. That's another thing too. Like they ask, it's like, do you want to be independent? And they're like, well, we don't want to be a state, but we don't want to lose, but we don't want to be independent because then we'll lose, a lot of, the benefits, from being American territory. So,
guys, it is heating up in here. It's almost 80, so I'm gonna turn off my cam, turn off the lights, and I'm still here. I'm starting to sweat here. It's like 78 degrees in here.
I was about to say, I hope that new strain of COVID you got's not coming back on you.
No, I've had COVID 3 times actually. I had it again over Thanksgiving. The what is it? BI 1.1 or something? BQ 1.1. That was it. Yeah, went right through my Omicron immunity. So I'm like, yeah, that's probably gonna go through even the bivalent vaccine there.
Yeah,
because the bivalent vaccine was based on BA5, I think. So I know Rainbow Astro, it's just the computers in this room, they make it, at least 10, 15 degrees hotter than it is outside. So it's cool outside, but it's hot in here. Yeah, hang on a second.
Shane, COVID's also proving another thing that a lot of people are asking, because, I see so many people, in medicine, who believe in the conspiracy, that the reason why medical corporations won't make cures for diseases is because then people will be cured and they won't make money. That's why we don't have a cure for the common cold, even though we easily could develop one. It's like, guess what, people? That's all COVID is. It's a cold virus, and it's proving why we can't quote unquote develop a cure for a common cold, because the cold virus mutates like almost on us several months.
It's also that the FDA restrictions are stopping us from developing broad spectrum antivirals and new novel broad spectrum antibiotics, which we're going to need. But I've talked about that before. Give me a second, and I'll be back in a second.
Yeah,
you can talk amongst yourselves.
I know what you're talking about. And VU, it's the idea that, well, a patient cures, a customer lost. No, it's not. People, there's always going to be a need for doctors, no matter how many medical issues we solve. Even if we find a cure for all diseases, people are still going to get injured. There's going to be people who are going to get injured. There's people who break bones. There's people, who are going to go to doctors because, their nose is too big and they want to say, hey, can you surgically make my nose smaller?
All right, I'm back. Studio lights are nice and bright, but they make you hot. Yeah, but I mean, whoever comes up with a cure for cancer is going to be able to write their ticket anywhere, so that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, they eradicated smallpox. You know, we eliminated polio from the U.S. rather quickly. I think it's just Pakistan and Afghanistan that are the two holdouts on that. So, yeah, if there's no money in it, why do they keep doing it?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Rainbow Ashley, but that argument a household is a customer loss, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, or it's like a restaurant. It's like, wait a minute, if I serve this this customer a hamburger and he eats it and he's full, he won't be hungry.
Yeah, he won't be hungry and he won't buy any more food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Puerto Ricans don't want to deal with all the bullshit.
sort of-
Hard to blame the master of Muppets.
Yeah. Don't restaurants do all kinds of stuff to keep their customers like hungry in buffets and stuff?
I've heard about that.
No,
like,
not really. But buffets are
Yeah.
just about having a selection, not really about
Yeah,
having a
and-
bigger quantity.
and
Because
in
you
all
just
honesty-
pay once and then you can eat as much as you want. They really don't want you eating more because the more you eat, the more they lose. But
Oh wait, no, I'm missing it. Sorry, my bad. I had it the other way around.
And another thing too is that a lot of those studies, you know, that talk about how it's like, oh, restaurants do these tricks or movies do these tricks, you know, advertisers do these tricks, you know, they've done studies on them, and they found out that at the end of the day, it's still up to the person, you know.
yeah, the
they
subliminal advertising doesn't work. No
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And you know, it's all up to the individual person. You know, I mean, that's another thing.
Yeah, and they've
too, that
even
people,
tried
you
to
know-
do, you know, Pavlovian stuff with like the way they portray food in the movies to try and make it look good. And you think, oh, that looks good. Now I'm going to go get something to eat, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Specific product placements can work if they're done right. But, you know, that's people who would have bought something anyway and they just decided to try that brand because
yeah.
they saw it in a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if someone who ordinarily drinks Coke, they see, you know, Pepsi in a movie and they think, oh, I think I'll have a Pepsi.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
I saw a video somewhere that
that's why I don't believe in, you know, the big tobacco conspiracy. You know, the idea that big tobacco is trying to make kids smoke. It's like, yeah, if there is a conspiracy, they're doing a really crappy job at it.
yeah. I mean,
Well, it's like they're trying to make it
That's
addictive. It's always been addictive. That's been like the point. You know, it's like that one idiot socialist. I forget who. I don't know. It was Second Thought or someone like that. Said that coffee was a conspiracy by, you know, factory workers to get their workers hooked on stimulants. People have been drinking coffee for centuries. Coffee goes back to colonial times.
Yeah, it goes back to I mean, people have been drinking, you know, have been eating stimulants to keep them going for a while, but coffee itself, yeah, it goes back to you know, I think 17th century Africa or something, when a Christian missionary in Ethiopia discovered, you know, that every time animals ate, you know, the beans of this one plant, they would go crazy and hyper.
But it was also like the British, you know, with the East India Company, just had these exorbitant prices for tea. And, you know, they were trying to smuggle in other tea. But a lot of people they didn't want to pay the prices for tea, so they started drinking coffee.
Yeah, I've actually read that's the reason why coffee became an American staple. It was because, you know, that was basically, you know, their middle finger to, you know, the British. You know, it's like if you're gonna drink tea, you have to buy it from the British Indian Trading Company, and you have to pay these exorbitant prices. I was craving coffee anyway. Yeah.
No, it does. Every time they say, oh, here's one thing, like they said it about gasoline. We saw this wasn't true with Katrina, and we're seeing it's not true now. That, oh, well, you know, it's not that people always have to buy the same amount of gas no matter how expensive it gets. Well, nope. The price of gas goes up. People cut down on their trips and they, you know, save the money every single time.
Oh yeah,
Supply and demand works, people.
One thing I always get confused about, though, is like with life-saving medications and all, because I keep hearing from people that like that is inelastic, because like people have to get it, and like there's no like they'll buy it for any price or whatever. That's
what's inelastic?
Like life-saving medicines. Like I'm not versed in like the specifics, but what?
No. It's still supply and demand.
Right, but if their life depends on it, they're willing to pay anything, aren't they?
No, not really. I mean, they'll pay more, of course, but yeah.
So
Well,
it
you
would
know, the
be
problem.
more inelastic. That's right.
The elasticities change, but there's still elasticity.
Well, I, like, is there a price where okay, I guess beyond where they can pay, but like I'm assuming people will like go into debt even to like save their own life.
Even
Like,
people who are dying have other concerns. They have loved ones. They want to get all their affairs in order. They want to make sure their loved ones are taken care of and not loaded down with a bunch of debt.
Yeah.
And I think the people who say that, I think are saying more about themselves, than they are about capitalism or whatever, because if they're putting themselves in that scenario and they're thinking that's what they would do, well, that's a problem with them, isn't it?
Yeah, and
well, if that's the angle you want to approach it from, sure. But like I think it doesn't have to be about yourself, right? Like for example, if like your child has to have life-saving medicine or something, and like they're in that scenario, I assume the calculus would be different. I don't know, like
I mean, the elasticities change, but there are still elasticities.
yeah, and
yeah, I guess, but like I mean, if you're if someone's child is like needs life-saving medicine, I really doubt. Like I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but like I really doubt they're going to be, they're not going to be willing to pay any price to like get life-saving medicine for their child, for example. I don't know, like I don't know.
And I mean, people are ignoring the other end of the equation, because if it is true that, parents who have, sick children are willing to pay a lot more money for the treatment, that just means that, more firms in a free market would be willing to step in and provide it.
yeah,
And that would increase
and
competition.
that's the issue we have with stuff like that is, as we said earlier, is the FDA. It's like there's tons of really sad stories of parents having kids that have rare diseases that are going to kill them, kill them, kill them, but they learned there's an experimental treatment that has shown promise, and while it may not cure them, it'll at least extend their lives and make their current situation much more easier. And the reason why they can't do it is because the government says we haven't approved it yet, so they literally have to dish out money to go to a country that allows it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's because, again, of the 1962 Kefauver-Harris amendments, which, again, according to numerous studies over the decades, has done nothing to improve the quality of drugs. It was supposed to be that you're testing for effectiveness now, so you know the drugs are effective. You really don't. You have the same uncertainties about effectiveness when you look at, what drugs that they approve that are, found out to be ineffective and stuff like that.
Yeah, speaking of medicine, I saw this really cringy documentary about thalidomide, and the guy, I think I posted it, but the guy was just like, he was not doing proper historical documentary. He was going into that with 100% hindsight bias, and he was even trying to character assassinate the company that made it by saying, "Oh yeah, it was founded in Germany by ex-Nazis." Most people.
Well, so was Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Volkswagen, literally Hitler started Volkswagen.
Yeah, and yeah, going back to that, he was like trying to paint it's like, oh yeah, thalidomide, right from its very get-go, it was found to be problematic, but the company kept hiding.
No, it
It's
wasn't.
Like, no, and I think you brought this up. The reason why people were taking it, wasn't because the company was lying. It was because for a long time, and we didn't learn until like the 70s or 80s that yes, chemicals can slip through the placenta, whereas previously it was thought that wasn't possible, and that only alcohol and certain viruses could do that.
Well, and also it was a lot better than barbiturates, which was the only other option at the time.
Yeah. And I hated how in that documentary he was praising that lady that that refused to approve of thalidomide like she was a hero. It's like, no, I think she should be seen as another bureaucrat, because of her now the FDA always goes to thalidomide as an excuse for why we can't approve medication.
Yep, that was the direct reason for the Kefauver-Harris amendments.
Yeah.
even though thalidomide wasn't actually approved. And I mean, the only problem that thalidomide ever had was with pregnant women. Well, how many drugs say do not take if you're pregnant or nursing?
Yeah.
That's all you would have to do. Like, okay, well, don't give it to pregnant women. That's all they had to do.
Yeah, that's another thing I heard too, is that thalidomide actually had other uses too. Like, it was good. Like, I even remember reading somewhere that some people used it, to treat, the nausea that comes with chemotherapy, and it worked really well. But because
it was like the late 90s, it was finally approved for stuff like that, and they just put the restriction on pregnant women. But that was what, like 30 years later or something, 35, something like that.
Yeah, it had a lot of practical uses, and it did some damage to to infants, and that is horrible. That's another thing too. I've also
but
heard
that's
that,
avoidable. That's avoidable. Again, just don't give it to pregnant women.
Yeah, but he was trying to make it like it was a grand conspiracy and that it made us all safer. No, it didn't.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, starting, I think it was early 70s. God, I'm drawing a blank on it. There's a guy we've talked about a lot, Sam Peltzman. That's what, the guy the Peltzman effect is named after. But he did like the first study of the drugs that came out, following the Kefauver-Harris amendments, and found that, as far as the drugs that were released on the market, what percentage of them were effective, it was pretty much the same as it was before they had passed the amendments. And that's been redone several times, over the ensuing decades, and they've all found the same thing. They've done absolutely nothing to make us safer. They haven't really given us any idea of whether something's more effective. The only thing they have done is delay. And like I said earlier, they made it impossible because there's three kinds of drugs. There's what the pharmaceutical company calls one drug, one bug. Oh, you got this illness, here's the drug for it. Another is a many-to-one, whereas, you've got cancer or something, we'll give you chemotherapy, and we'll give you radiation treatments, and we'll give you this and that. A number of things working together that cure this. You can do both of those. What you can't do is the one-to-many. Here's one drug that does a whole bunch of stuff like an antibiotic. And if you look at it, the development of novel new antibiotics just hit a wall in 1962. And that's going to be a problem because it's not just about, your kid's ear infection or whatever. Surgery as we know it would be impossible without antibiotics. So what are we going to do, however long it is in the future, 30, 40, 50 years, when all of the operating rooms are full of bacteria that have developed immunities to all of the antibiotics we have? Unless we come out with novel new antibiotics, that's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And finally getting some things that may be some broad spectrum antivirals, like a couple of the drugs that I can't say or I'll be kicked off of YouTube again. But that actually do seem to work for multiple viruses. It probably won't be as broad spectrum as antibiotics, because there's all sorts of different kinds of viruses, DNA, RNA, single-stranded, multi-stranded, positive sense, negative sense. But at least for a type of virus, like a cold virus, coronavirus, things like that. Like, I think that's single-stranded, positive sense. It does seem like there are ones that work for a host of those, and they have a number of different mechanisms behind it. But it's so impossible to get the FDA to recognize that. Because of the Kefauver-Harris amendments, you have to test it for like a specific condition or a specific disease or whatever. And there's no real setup whatsoever for saying, oh, well, this does a range of things.
Yeah. Honestly, actually speaking of that, I actually read this one interesting article, and it was about Harry Potter, and it pointed out that when you really think about it, the medicine in Harry Potter and how they treat magical stuff, it's not as advanced and magical as you think it is, because it's like,
oh no,
they do not have broad spectrum antidotes except maybe a Bezoar, which are rare. It's like literally, in fact, that was the plot of the Half-Blood Prince, is that Ron was poisoned, and the only reason he was saved was because Harry used a Bezoar, because Slughorn was like, okay, what poison does he have? I gotta find the precise antidote.
Yep. They could have done it so easily because you have the forbidden curse, Avada Kedavra. It's the killing curse. It kills whatever you want and is targeted by your hate. Okay, so you got a person with cancer. You hate the cancer cells. And you cast Avada Kedavra against the tumor, against the cancer cells. Or someone is sick with a virus. You cast Avada Kedavra against the virus.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah,
they
I
don't.
mean,
They apparently aren't advanced enough to realize that most illnesses are caused by life forms, or in the case of cancer, your own cells that have gone crazy.
yeah.
They're living
Yeah.
things inside you, so they should be susceptible to Avada Kedavra, right?
Yeah. Also, I'm sorry. Also, I am sorry, Harry Potter universe, but the whole secrecy, the whole Vow of Secrecy Act, that violates so many human rights violations. It's like
Yeah.
you have to have your memory, your personal memory wiped just because you saw a dragon briefly fly over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
the
like,
the
I just-
Wizarding world isn't that big on human rights.
Yeah. That's another thing. That's one thing I never liked about the Harry Potter. Maybe J.K. Rowling was trying to point that, but everyone seems to get the opposite view. It's like everyone treats the Wizarding world as if they're victims. It's like, no, you guys are playing victim,
No, she keeps, portraying about, especially in the books, like about how primitive they are.
Yeah. And I mean, and let's be real here. When you really think about it, non-magical people have every right to be afraid of, magical people to a degree. I mean, it is established in the books that witches and wizards used to abuse muggles just for the hell of it.
Yep.
They used to curse and jinx stuff like that. It's like, how do you expect them to react? You're jinxing them and you're giving them potions that they have no method of curing themselves, and their only solution is to go to you. How do you expect them to react? And so when the muggles finally get fed up with being cursed and hexed all the time, they attack the wizards, and the wizards go, ew, we're being oppressed and targeted.
Yeah, I envy you. The virus does do some damage to you.
Yeah.
Like in the case of COVID, it can damage a lot of the cells surrounding your olfactory nerves, and that's why you lose your sense of smell, or you get that weird COVID smell in your nose. But yeah, the real problems are caused by the cytokine storm in your lungs. And because remember, the virus doesn't want to kill you. You're where it lives. So any virus that can reproduce and supplant the other viruses, but also have a milder effect on humans, is going to get spread around more. That's exactly what we're seeing with COVID. I can tell you personally, because I got, the original COVID. If you guys remember, that knocked me down for like 2 months. That was really bad.
Yeah, I mean.
And then when I had Omicron, which got through both the natural immunity from the original and from the vaccine, that was a couple of weeks, and that was pretty bad. And then this latest one, this BQ 1.1, it was pretty much over Thanksgiving. There were 5 like really bad days that I had. But after that, it was just kind of like, well, it was more like you have a really bad cold, but then you recover from it in a couple of days. It was like that, except I'd start to recover, and then it would hit me again, and I'd start to recover, and it would hit me again, and it just did that like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's milder every time, so it's exactly what a lot of virologists and infectious disease specialists were saying at the beginning, that the most likely scenario is that it's just going to slowly evolve into forms that are more transmissible but less severe until it becomes just another cold virus.
Yeah, that's why those biological thriller movies about a killer virus, that's why Plague Inc. is unrealistic.
Well, the first virus that mutates just by chance an ability to not kill the human but be spread better, it's immediately going to supplant all of those.
Yeah.
Because if they're killing that's why you have Ebola outbreaks that are really bad, but they burn out quickly.
Yeah. Contrary to what to what a lot of those medical thrillers like to portray, where it's like, oh, it's a killer virus or bacteria that's immune to everything and it kills you like that. In real life, evolutionarily speaking, it is possible to be too good.
Yep.
Because
again, the virus doesn't want to kill you.
Yeah.
It's in the virus's best interest to keep you not only alive, but healthy so that you're up and walking around and can spread out its children to other humans.
Well, yeah,
That's the evolutionary imperative of a virus.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this before. That's the reason why there's some diseases out there that are so, deadly and all that. It's not because they're super bugs that are immune to everything and, their only goal is to kill anything they infect. It's just because they're so rare and such an anomaly that they don't have that chance to evolve into a less dangerous form.
Yeah. If they have some kind of non-human vector, like malaria does with mosquitoes. You can see that clearly with cholera, because when cholera is waterborne, because people are basically drinking their own poo water, hunter-gatherer culture, it's not this like idyllic thing where they're one with nature. No, imagine a bunch of people drinking their own poo water. That was hunter-gatherer cultures. And of course, the cholera just lives in that. And, so then charities come along. They clean up the water supply. The cholera mutates from a waterborne strain to an airborne strain, which requires people to be up and moving around. And so it's a lot milder. People still have cholera, but it's mutated into a much less harmful form because it no longer has that non-human vector of just, lying around in the poo water.
Although ironically, a lot of medical thrillers will have you believe if it spreads to the air, that means it's 1,000 times deadlier now.
No.
Yeah.
I was going to mention. Oh, sorry.
I was about to say, I even saw one doctor react and all that, and he was reacting to a medical thriller about a killer virus, and the virus started out as like being a waterborne thing, but then it spreads to the air, and the guy has one funny question. It's like, okay, I got a question for the filmmakers. If this virus, is now airborne, why are people still exhibiting the symptoms of the waterborne variant? We wouldn't be seeing, like bloody stools or whatnot. They would be coughing and stuff like that.
Well, and how does it spread itself if you've got a virus that's deadly? Yeah, it would be bad for the people immediately around you, but then they'd go down and the infection would peter out. It wouldn't be like this worldwide or continent-wide Armageddon or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
what if this is probably a good thriller here. I don't know how biologically possible it is, but what if you could have a virus that could survive with a water droplet even when it turns to vapor, and then it goes back up in the clouds and just rains down on you?
Yeah.
And viruses are in the rain.
I mean,
I don't think it's very biologically plausible, but it might make for a cool thriller.
I don't know about viruses, but I've heard some toxins can do that.
Well, because the way rain works, you have a cloud because water vapor, when it condenses, it adheres to some kind of particle. And usually it's stuff like, volcanic dust and other stuff in the air. But it could be pollution or it could be a toxin in the air or whatever. And then it can rain down the toxins.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, INVU? I don't get what INVU is reacting to.
I don't know either, but it also kind of reminds me about the book the Stand, and how so many people like to make comparisons about that. Yeah. If I recall correctly, too, in The Stand, it's later revealed the only reason why the virus, killed almost everyone on Earth wasn't because it was a super virus that was genetically modified to kill people. It's because it was somehow possessed by the ghost of an evil spirit or something. Like, if I recall correctly, that's something Stephen King likes to do in his books. He likes to make it like he has like this one villain, I forgot his name, but he's like this ancient evil deity, and like every couple hundred years he appears in the world and causes global disasters, and he takes on the form of sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a natural disaster, and in the case of The Stand, he took the form of a killer virus.
Oh yeah, I think INVU is talking about my my thriller idea. Yeah, every time it rains, everyone heads for shelter because the viruses are in the rain.
Don't people do that already?
Oh yeah, but not for like running for their lives, just because they don't want to get wet. But I mean,
Yeah,
there's a big storm and people are huddled up in their basements because
Oh yeah, if I recall correctly, that's something Stephen King likes to do. He likes to, make, I forgot the guy's name though, like, because he did a similar thing with The Pulse, which is a movie about where suddenly, there's a signal in cell phones that causes people to become violent, dangerous people, and it's later revealed that it's actually, that big villain who decided he wanted to be a post for a while, and once he infected enough people, he took on a human form. What is that guy's name? I think it's like Randall something.
I don't know what you're talking about there.
The virus that always makes me like
Randall
it's creepy,
Flagg.
but it's interesting. Okay, the virus that always creeps me out, but sounds interesting is like I've always been like kind of fascinated by how rabies is like it's at least from what I've heard, it's so simple as a virus, but it can like I don't know. I don't remember all the details, but like the fact that it can go all the way up to your brain and stuff, and like hijack the machinery there and stuff. That seems kind of crazy to me. Like especially
It doesn't turn you, contrary to what popular people believe, it doesn't turn you into a violent maniacal killer until you die. That's actually a myth.
right, right. But it's still like I don't know what the process is, but like can it hijack like certain protein? I don't know. I don't remember the
No,
exact.
from what I read, basically what it does is that it causes so much damage to your nervous system. That's why creatures that are infected with it act the way they do. It's not because they're being possessed and the virus is telling them.
What are we talking about? I lost track.
Rabies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not because the virus.
It depends on the animal.
Yeah.
Because usually it's spread through like possums and raccoons and stuff like that, and it makes them very docile and lovable, and they'll just come up to you and they're all like, but then you go, oh, and you go down to pet it and it bites you.
Yeah.
Or bats. Bats are another vector. But yeah, it doesn't normally live in dogs, and that's why it has such a destructive, a destructive force on them.
Well, and the reason why it's so deadly too, though, is not because, contrary to popular belief, it's what I said earlier. It's not because it's a super virus or anything. It's just because it's such an anomaly. Even in the wild, it's rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so rare that it's never had time to actually properly, mutate and evolve to a less harmful strain.
Well, it isn't like I said, possums and raccoons, but it doesn't. It infects a dog, and yeah, dogs can infect other dogs, but again, it's so deadly it peters out quickly. Especially if you got a lot of dogs that have been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Speaking of, wasn't there this like scare a few years ago about like a water like this brain-eating disease in water or whatever? Like if you went to a warm tropical water.
Oh yeah, that amoeba.
What was that all about? Like what was that all about?
There's like that amoeba that it's incredibly rare, but if you do get infected, it's pretty much almost lethal, and if you do survive, you'll have permanent brain damage. But yeah, it's rare. And another thing too that many people fail to realize, it's not, you can actually go into water with the amoeba and you'll be perfectly fine. It's only if it gets really within your nose, like if you like pretty much
really high up. Yeah, it's called amyboidosis.
Yeah, the only way you can get infected with that is not only would you have to go into the water with the amoeba, you would literally have to find the specific water and literally snort it. Yeah.
I have no idea what Master of Muppets is talking about. Didn't it rain toxic blobs in the Northwest one time?
Acid rain? I don't know.
I wouldn't call acid rain toxic blobs. It was just,
Yeah, Shane, earlier I was talking about, that one villain, who took the form of the virus in the stand. I found out his name. It's Randall Flagg, I think. Okay. That's how you pronounce it.
But no, it was just because again of the chemicals that the water was binding to, it made it slightly acidic. Water can have both acidic and alkaline properties depending on what it's combined with.
Yeah.
In chemistry, you'll learn that since water is in the middle of the pH scale, that means it's neutral. It's neither an acid nor a base. Actually, it's both. And the chemical term for it is hydroxyic acid. So they even
Wasn't there
refer to
this,
it as
like,
an acid.
wasn't there this like joke a while back where people were calling like water, what was it, dihydrogen oxide or something?
Dihydrogen
And like
monoxide.
it was
Yeah,
like
that's not a proper
monoxide. Yeah,
chemical. The-
right.
But yeah, they were just trying to be all sciencey sounding to basically troll people.
Yeah.
Like they're just taking nuclear reactor coolant and spraying it on our crops. All those unexplained mystery shows. Oh God. Anyone remember when the History Channel was about history and not alien, abductions or whatever?
I mean,
Or
the
when the
most
travel,
highest
or when
rated
the
source
Travel
is
Channel,
Pawn Stars.
when the Travel Channel was about going places instead of hunting ghosts.
Pawn shop.
Yeah, exactly. That's their highest rated show.
What
That's
is?
so sad. Who goes on Pawn Shop? Who goes on History Channel to watch Pawn Shop? That makes me so sad.
I don't know. It's sad for humanity. That's my wife. It's a guilty pleasure. She loves those, ghost hunter stories, and she knows it's bullshit. She just likes watching them, and I can't stand them myself. They
What
get me riled
movie?
up.
Sorry, I was in the bathroom again.
Those ghost hunter stories.
Oh yeah.
All the stuff I debunked like within the first year of this channel. EVP
Oh
and
yeah,
all that.
oh yeah, those things where they go in there with a night vision camera and all they hear is the house
Yeah.
crack a little bit and they're like, holy crap, that was a ghost.
Oh no. They'll actually do. There was like after the third season, I think it was the third or second. One of the hosts, he was on a podcast, and he was finally just like, "Oh my god, I can't do this anymore. The whole thing's a fake." When they hear that voice come in, if they can't hear anything that they can kind of mangle into sounding like a voice, they'll actually transmit a voice. And they'll tell us to react and pretend like we heard something and it was shocking. And he said, like, I got in this. He said he got into this to actually go see if there were ghosts and see if they could find them. And the whole thing. And of course, they canned him as one of the hosts after that. But yeah. It's all fake and they know it.
Yeah. That wouldn't be an issue if they said it was like if people knew it, right? Like,
yeah.
Like if they didn't pretend, like if it was just for entertainment.
Well, I'm sure for legal purposes they've got that little disclaimer at the end. This is for entertainment purposes only. But yeah, if they're doing the rest of it pretending that it's real, that, and in my opinion, that shouldn't fly.
Yeah.
Man, at least Pawn Stars has like some historical connection. I guess some of the items they trade on there are somewhat
might be.
What is it? Is it like a poor man's Antique Roadshow or something?
Essentially, it's like basically people go up there and they say they have historical antiques, and they basically spend the whole show just thinking, is it actually real? Is it authentic? Is it not authentic? Find out. And it's basically that's the whole premise of the show.
And the answer is going to be no.
Answer is going to be, and it's going to be like, darn, I wasted.
I think that's actually next week's quick. I think it's next week's, that when you have a headline or something that ends in a question mark, the answer is going to be no.
Yeah.
And then of course, also like one of the biggest cliches of the show is how the host always lowballs them. Like someone could come in and say, "Okay, I have the cross Jesus was crucified on," and he's like, "Best I can do is $6, and I'm taking all the risk."
Yeah.
I don't know, buddy. Yeah, it seems too much.
Oh, there was one of the popes back in the Middle Ages said that there were enough pieces of the original genuine cross to rebuild St. Anthony's Cathedral.
Yeah.
No, like people will come in with these extraordinary, like people will come in like, oh, this is a signed letter my great grandpa got from Abraham Lincoln, and it's like, okay, like.
Oh. Well, to be fair, I have heard a lot of pawn shops are like that. I mean, I understand why, they're trying to make a profit. That's why they try to buy it below the price. But some of them can be really stupid. It's like some of them, it's like they buy. Like one thing that really pisses me off, and I have heard that this does need to stop, is if you try to sell them gold, and it's proven it's authentic gold and it's good quality, but they still try to shortfall you because it makes no sense. Because it's like the whole point of buying gold,
sell it for spot price.
Yeah, the whole point of buying gold is that you hang on to it so it becomes more valuable in the future,
Yep.
Yeah. I remember when one of the in one of the earlier episodes, there was this guy who claimed to have bought in a real Picard statue, and when Rick debunked in like record time and like, no, this is a reproduction. It says made in the U.S. He got like so like pissed off about it.
Well,
Why?
I have heard that even though the shop itself is legit and a lot of the stuff that comes in through is legit, they do pay people to come in and say
Yeah.
claim you have something, and because believe it or not, Matt Pat from AKA Pat the NES Punk, he was on Pawn Stars one time where he was claiming to offer his 2 copies of Nintendo World Championships, which is like the holy grail of classic NES game collections. But many people who know him personally knows that he would never sell those things, even above what he paid for them,
Yeah.
And I think he later confirmed it's like, yeah, they asked me to come on and just show it and just make them an offer. Yeah. Just make them an offer. You don't have to sell. If you want to, that's fine. But if you don't want to, that's also fine. They just want the publicity.
Yeah.
I think
Speaking
the
of
last...
NES games, sorry, yeah, there was this
Oh,
guy
sorry,
who
go
came
ahead,
on
go
with
ahead.
there was this guy who came on with a sticker sealed original Super Mario Bros. That he wanted like $1 million for, which actually turned out to be a fair offer, or a fair ask.
Oh, it
Yeah,
did?
no, I highly doubt this guy actually thought they were gonna get it. I mean, they would never pay $1 million for a game cartridge.
I mean, I ain't gonna lie. It's one problem with rare games and all that. It's like, now I kind of understand this with like toys and figurines, but it's like this idea that if the plastic wrap is still on it, that means it's super valuable. It's like, well, then why even bother? It's like, because the whole point of a video game is I want to play it.
Well, because they were collectors, and the
Yeah.
collectors keep it in the packaging because when most people buy it, they remove it from the packaging, so the ones still in the packaging are more rare.
Well, that's kind of stupid though, because it's like a game should be played, people. Like a toy.
Subjective theory of value. They buy it for whatever utility they think they can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they can buy it for whatever value they think it's worth, but we're entitled to call them out if we think it's stupid.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, that kind of mentality of I'm gonna buy it as an investment, that's how bubbles get created, people.
That is how.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna do something that like if you're going to say I want something to hold as an investment for the future, and you go to a coin shop, make sure you ask for junk gold or junk silver, which just means it's only the melt value, the spot value of the metals in it. Because otherwise, they'll try to sell you this super rare coin that'll be worth $10 million one day, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they sell it for you way above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, South Park did a whole episode about that. Where they sell this jewelry well above what it's actually worth on the market. Yeah.
What is
best thing is junk gold and junk silver.
Yep.
What is going on with the whole, like, I really know nothing about crypto, but like I've just heard like from the news that like there's been a huge like crash there or whatever, and like
it's been a bear market year. It's been a bear market year for crypto. They've all gone, but everything's gone down. I did this, in a video. I compared, what cryptos like Bitcoin and Dash were doing to like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and I think I did the Dow as well. And they were, I mean, it was different magnitudes, but they were all basically going up and down together as the market went. I mean, it's a financial instrument. It's probably going to do overall what the financial instruments are doing. Although Dash has had a really good last few weeks in terms of Bitcoin, when the direct trading between Dash and Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been going up, but Dash has actually been going up relative to it.
Because I've been hearing from like a lot of people. What was that thing that like crashed? Was it not NFTs? What am I thinking? It just crashed and like everyone was talking about it. And I heard it FTX. Yes, I keep forgetting. Like and a lot of people I know in person. I don't know enough about it, so I don't talk about it. But a lot of people I know in person who say they study it more or whatever, like say that like I don't know. They've just been saying that like I don't know, crypto sucks now. I don't know. I don't know enough about the information, but I just
Yeah.
heard that it was
Well,
really bad.
Shane brought this
Dash
up-
versus Bitcoin has gone up 30% over the last month.
and I was about to say this also, and Shane brought this up in his video where he did in defense of insider trading. Every time someone comes up to you and says, "I'm an expert in this area, in this area of investment, and I'm good, and I'm willing to bet that it's going to fall," 90% of the time, they're just people who either don't know any better or they have a bridge to sell you.
And in terms of dollars, Dash is actually up 20% over the last month. So yeah, it's doing a pretty good rally.
I mean, going back to South Park, I mean, there was that Facebook episode where Cartman has this like podcast on Facebook where he talks about friend stock and all that. And it's a parody of that one guy who was known for doing that stock prediction, where he would be like, "Newsflash, this stock is going down. Oh, newsflash, this stock is going up."
Yeah.
The irony is, and I think maybe the creators were aware of it, is that guy was terrible at predicting stocks. Like everyone was talking about, it's like, "Oh yeah, he's the expert on it." No,
But Bitcoin in terms of dollars has gone down 6.44% over the
I
last
gotta
month.
look it up.
So yeah, Dash is going up while Bitcoin's going down. And it'll probably get a boost in a little bit when Dash Direct finally releases their new card programs, because that's something we've been missing.
So I am hoping, like, at least eventually for, I guess, the prices to at least stable out a bit so we can actually be used as a proper currency and not like
Oh yeah.
Well, it's still a fledgling industry. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, if the value goes, as it does,
People just need
yeah.
to get rid of the idea of, oh yeah, Bitcoin's it because I'm just going to hodl it, and the hold it with the D and the L mixed up. I'm going to hodl it and then it'll go up to the moon and all that. No, buy it to use it. Buy it because you find it useful. And that's the only way cryptocurrency is going to have value, is as currency. That's why I like Dash, because I can actually buy stuff with it. And all the transactions are instant, and transaction fees are less than a cent.
Oh, I found out what Cartman was parodying. So yeah, in the South Park episode "You Have Zero Friends," Cartman is doing a parody called "Mad Friends," and he says that Kyle, is bad for friend stock because he picked a loser. Apparently, that was based off of Mad Money by Jim Cramer, and I don't know if the South Park producers were aware of it. Jim Cramer was a terrible financial advisor, and if I recall correctly, he actually got sued. Yeah, he actually got sued because people followed his advice on his TV show and they lost money.
Yep.
If I recall correctly, that's actually
if I went out for a Jersey Mike sub and I used Dash Direct, I could save 4.8%. 2% at Lowe's, 2% at Subway, 5% at Papa John's. You want to get a pizza? I love Dash Direct.
Yeah.
Because those are all done as e-gift cards. And the way e-gift cards work is the resellers get a cut. And that's that like 5% discount or 2% discount, because it's different for each one. But that is the cut of it that they give to the reseller. Well, Dash Direct passes that on to you because they don't make money for you. They're paid directly out of the Dash treasury. So you don't pay them anything. They don't take a cut of anything. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now most cryptocurrencies, they're just speculation tools. Or they're just...
Well, some of them are doing things. Monero specializes in privacy, things like that. A lot of them are trying to build out their utility. Ethereum is trying to be a lot better at, smart contracts and things like that. They moved from proof of work over to proof of stake so that the transaction fees won't be ridiculous. Which is good for us graphic artists, because that means the price of GPUs is going down. Because that was the big coin that was used, the biggest one that was using GPUs for mining, because with Bitcoins, it's usually done with ASICs.
That's why, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hatred for saying this, I think the hate towards NFTs is a little bit overhyped. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't support NFTs, and I understand why that, but I think the idea of them isn't inherently bad. I think the problem is that right now they're being bought and created for completely inappropriate reasons,
Yeah, they're being done for dumb reasons, but they have a lot of legitimate uses.
Yeah, they have legit uses. It's just that, like you said, a lot of people are buying and creating them not to make them into a practical, useful alternative to currency. It's just because, oh, it's a fad thing. It's like Beanie Babies.
Well, that's how things start out. Remember what a fad movies were when they came out. The Lumiere brothers said there was no future for movies. It was just a fad, and they were having fun. Your audiences would pack in to watch a looping film of a man sneezing. Yeah. Well, and then, of course, they knew that wasn't going to last, but then other more creative filmmakers started using it as a storytelling medium. Same thing with audio. When audio first came out, like if you look at the early cartoons with audio, it's all about these characters with rubber limbs dancing in sync to the music, because that was such a novelty then. As it went on, cartoons became more, sophisticated for storytelling, mostly for comedic value. And that it happened that way with sound, with color. Like if you look at all the color in The Wizard of Oz, that was to wow people who hadn't seen color for. The original Star Trek, a lot of that design, the costume design, the reason why their tunics are gold and blue and red, and the reason why the phasers are red and purple and things like that is because color TVs were new, and NBC was owned by, was it RCA? It was one of the TV companies. And a lot of people bought TVs because they wanted to see Star Trek in color. And they're going, ooh, with the color. So all of these things start out as fads. And then they either die off or they develop into a mature format. Same with CGI. Same with everything.
Bit of a...
The bow and arrow might have started out as a fad. Who knows? Hey, look, cool, I can make a stick fly. Oh, wait a minute, we can use this as hunting.
Yeah, CGI started as a fad, but now, 2D animation is...
Well, I'll give you the perfect example, because I think it was 86. One of the I forget the name of it. Well, the big CGI festival they have. The winner that year was a real showcase of what the Amiga could do, and it was a ball that was bouncing on a floor that was a grid, and the ball reflected the grid with the proper distortions and everything, and it was just a loop of it, and everyone was wow. The next year, Pixar came in with Luxo Jr. And they were showcasing really two things: the hierarchical motion that the lamp was making, and the self shading. It could shade it on itself. So it comes up, and it starts moving, and everyone thinks that's it, and they're already applauding. And then the story just gets going and gets going and gets going and gets going. And who was it? I think it was Blinn, one of those big CGI guys, was coming up to John Lasseter afterwards. And Lasseter is he's an animator. He's not a programmer. And he's thinking, oh God, Blinn's going to ask me about how all this technical stuff works. And what Blinn actually asked him was, the big lamp, is that the mother or the father? And that was when they realized they had done it. Everyone had just seen this absolute marvel of CGI technology and then forgot about it because they got engrossed in the story. Yeah. That was the moment.
Fun fact about Luxo Jr. I saw this on a video on YouTube. Someone actually, quote unquote, remade Luxo Jr. in real life by using factory machinery and an AI programming.
I think 2 years before Luxo, they made one called Andre and Wally B.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was like an early test, and all the characters are like spheres with cones attached and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a different question, but I'm in university right now, and I noticed that, how do I word it? Like, oh man, I'm losing my question. Give me a sec. Like, it seems like it seems weird because like I don't know. I kind of grew up like when I was in high school. I would like watch. I was like I had a big like new atheist phase, and I was like, oh like yeah like screw these fundamentalist Christians or whatever. And like I watched a lot of these like left leaning new atheist types. And now that I'm in college, I'm noticing a lot of the same crap that like like the left used to make fun of the fundamentalist right about, like back in the day where it was like, oh, if you watch this movie, you're sinning. If you like do this activity, you're sinning. The left does now. It's just they use different language, but it's fundamentally the same thing. Like they'll say, oh, if you watch this movie, you're being it's just they say sinning, but in a different way. Like they'll be like, oh, if you engage in this activity, if you say this, if you talk like this, if you go watch this, it's the same sort of like, what is it, moralizing? Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's so weird to me because like it seems like they use the exact same tactics now that the fundamentalists like that I used to I used to watch and I used to see like them make fun of it like 20 years ago. So I mean I don't know if that's a bit of tangent, but it's just something I've noticed. I think it's interesting.
Oh, and there was another one of the pioneers of CGI. I'm bad with names tonight, but this was like, I think it was like 68, 69. And you can find this online. And he had just a CGI model of a hand, but the camera was moving around it and, you know, closing up with the fingers. And then it would actually go, because the hand was hollow, it would go inside the hand and you'd see the hand from inside. It's not much by today's standards, but imagine being back then, having never seen something like that before, and how much it would blow you away. Okay, that was Jim Blinn with the talking to Lassiter.
Okay, I know this is somewhat unrelated, but what's your opinion on the whole established titles debacle? You know, that company that sponsors pretty much every prominent
Oh yeah,
YouTuber.
that's BS.
Yeah.
That they take that about as seriously as one of those is, oh, you can pay to name a star and you can name the star after your loved one and we'll put it in the database. Well, yeah, they will put it in your database, but no one uses it. It's not like, you know, NASA is going to be calling that star by that name.
I mean, the only yeah, I mean, they lied about the whole land ownership thing and also the lord or lady whatever. And I'm not even sure about the validity of their promise to plant a tree for everyone.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like literally, like every YouTuber I watch is sponsored by them. It's crazy how many people they got, um, they got under in their loop.
I think it's just about getting to the point where if you see people advertising all over YouTube, don't go with them because they're crap.
Yeah. I remember, I think about a year ago when every YouTuber was sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, even though it turned out to be a pretty terrible game.
I mean, it's a free-to-play game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was Ed Catmull in 1972.
This is that Luxo Junior fan remake I wanted to show you.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't. Yeah, apparently this isn't CGI. These were actual control. These were actual robots.
Robot controlled, yeah. Okay, just search. Oop, I hit the mic. Search for computer animated hand 1972 on YouTube. Looks like it's. And think about people who had never seen anything like that before, and how much that would have freaked them the flip out. Did the chat stop or do I need to reload it? I'm going to try reloading it. Nope. Okay, looks like Guns, Guitars, and Comics was the last. Was the last one. And no one chatting on Odyssey, it looks like. At the current time of the alternatives, it seems like Odyssey is better for uploading produced videos, but Rumble is better for live streams. You just need 100 subs on Rumble to be able to live stream it. I don't have that yet. Yeah, getting back to the NFT thing, you can use it for all sorts of things. You can use it for like the title of ownership. You could put a marriage license on it or whatever. You know, the whole point is it's a non-fungible token. There's something special about it. You know, it could be, you know, stock in a company get off of their stock through NFTs or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but instead we get pictures of apes.
Well, like I said, it's at that fad phase right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't be shitty art forever.
And of course, a lot of artists are throwing a fit about it though, because it's like, dude, it's gonna, make copyright, it's gonna compromise copyright. It's like, here's something I use as an example that is further proof to prove why copyright does not encourage creative freedom, but it stifles it. Try looking up who owns King Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know who owns King Kong? Like James Rolfe did this for his Kongathon because he did a video about who owns King Kong that unfortunately was removed from YouTube. And he contacted his own lawyer who knows a thing or two about copyright. And he asked, so who owns King Kong? And his argument was, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I looked it up and apparently it's owned by Warner Brothers. The property.
No, Warner Brothers only owns certain movies of King Kong.
Oh.
Yeah, like if you wanted to make your own King Kong movie, what would you do? Although you could do Sherlock Holmes because all of the Arthur Conan Doyles are now public domain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hold on. The very first copyright laws, did they have them lasting for like 56 years?
In the United States, I think it was 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. They weren't supposed to be that long.
Yeah, but then Mickey Mouse was about to go into the public domain, and Disney went ree.
The Sonny Bono law. But if they don't do something, what is it, next year it'll go into the public domain? I think it's next year that the first 3 Mickey Mouse cartoons go into the public domain. Don't quote me on that, but
I've actually heard
it's either next year or the year after.
I've actually heard that's the reason why some companies like Disney are making really crappy movies, that are only going directly, to the live stream. It's not because they're intending them to make money. It's because the copyright rule says if you don't make something, after a certain amount of time, you forfeit the copyright.
Yeah, they're protecting the IP. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, they're like, okay, make a cheesy, toddler-friendly Mickey Mouse, sure. I don't care how bad it is, just make one. Fun fact,
it's also the case, they redesign the character. So it'll just be those first 3 Mickey Mouse cartoons going into the public domain and the original design. If you use a design with the later modifications, that would still be under copyright.
Yeah. And when you look up historically about copyright, it was never about, protecting creative rights. It was all about control and monopolization.
Yep. It was about putting writers and artists under the yokes of the publishers and basically making them servants to it. And look around, that's basically what it still is.
Oh yeah.
Talk to musicians and ask them how much they're basically servants of the record labels.
Yeah.
Or writers, servants of the movie studio or whatever they're working for.
Yeah.
It's Steamboat Willie and 2 others. I forget the other. There were 3 of them released that year. And what
Oh,
they do is
wow.
they just say, okay, everything that would where the whatever that is, the 75 or 90 or whatever that limit is, that ran out in the following year, it all gets made public domain on January 1st of the next year.
Yeah.
So many libertarians I've heard defend or think that, well, intellectual property isn't perfect. They think it's a natural extension of private property. So many.
Well, here's the deal. You can own a thought. You can own a thought in your head. The moment that thought physically manifests out in the wild, that's it.
January 1st, 2024, Mickey Mouse goes in the public domain.
And another thing too, and so many people like to accuse other artists of stealing is like, and yeah, that does happen a lot. But here's another thing too. Contrary to what some people believe, it is completely possible, very easily, to coincidentally make two songs that have nothing to do with each other, yet they sound very similar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because
they sue each other over it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Coldplay got sued because their song "Viva La Vida" was accused of stealing, a guitar riff, from a different song, and so many people were like that, and they literally had musical analysts, analyze it, and the reason why Coldplay won was because the music analyst said, "Listen, yes, the guitar riffs are very similar, but here's the thing: it's a very simple guitar riff. It's very easy for a completely random person with the bare minimal musical training to come up with."
Well, it's like Huey Lewis in the News actually sued, forgetting the guy's name again, the guy who did the Ghostbusters theme, because he basically used that same background. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum. That's very similar to the backbeat for I Want a New Drug.
Ray Parker Jr.
Ray Parker, yeah, thanks. God, my dysnomia is really bad tonight. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I think they ended up settling, so we didn't get an answer from the courts as to, like, is that actually something you can copyright? Because it's just so, the process is the punishment.
Yeah,
As long as they can get it, through the door. I mean, even just getting it to like a where they just dismiss it right off the bat for being I mean, even that can be expensive, but if it goes any distance, you're paying out the wazoo.
I just don't get the thought process for extending like intellectual property to things like.
Fun fact about that lawsuit, apparently Parker himself was asked to comment on the lawsuit, and he said that, believe it or not, Huey Lewis wasn't the only person that sued him, for the Ghostbusters song. He said something along the lines of, when you sell that many records, every single music artist out there is going to come forward and saying, yeah, you stole my song.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do that.
Yeah.
Like, I can sort of understand where people are coming from when it comes to, like, books or whatever, but music I just don't get, because it's like in terms of intellectual property.
Yeah,
like,
you're trying to control you're trying to say you own vibrations.
Right, which is so weird. Like
what? Entire song I can understand, but not like certain beats.
Yeah.
Okay, it's Steamboat Willie and the Galloping Gaucho. So it's 2 entering the public domain. I thought it was 3.
Owning vibrations. It's like how patents let people, basically say that people can own math or naturally occurring biochemicals.
Imagine if people could own math. Like, Jesus Christ.
That's what they tried to do when they copyright these algorithms or something like that. Yeah, one guy tried to patent elliptic curves and went after all the people making elliptic curve cryptography, demanding royalties.
Yeah.
And then there's trade secrets, like for example, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Fun fact. One person pointed out that Plankton didn't have to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, because in one episode, SpongeBob says the Krabby Patty secret formula is protected by law, which means it's probably copied, which means it's probably patented. So literally, all Plankton would have to do is go to the Bikini Bottom patent office and say, "Hey, I want to see the patent to the Krabby Patty secret formula." Then all he would have to do is analyze it, take it there, and then do something with it, like maybe add another ingredient that doesn't really affect the taste, and then say, oh, I've got it now, because there'd be nothing Mr. Krabs could do.
Coming up in 2023, January 1st, things that go into the public domain. The classic silent movie Metropolis. The classic Talkie the Jazz Singer, the first full-length talkie. Alfred Hitchcock's first thriller, The Lodger. Showboat. Oscar Hammerstein and Jerome Kern. And the last 2 stories in Sherlock Holmes. So Sherlock Holmes, the characters has been public domain, but the last 2 that he wrote are next year. Alan Quatermain's Alan and the Ice Gods. Steppenwolf, Bridge of St. Louis, To the White House by Virginia Woolf.
Fun fact about Sherlock Holmes, the address that Sherlock Holmes has in the books, it's an actual address in London, and from what I heard,
No, it's not. It's not. He deliberately chose one because it's 221B Baker Street. There is no 221, there is no 200 block on Baker Street. He did that on purpose, but so many people were sending mail for that address that the post office created a specific box for 221B, and they basically routed to the Sherlock Holmes fan club, I think.
Oh.
But they created it specifically because people were writing to Sherlock Holmes.
I heard that there was eventually something like that created. There was a 200 Baker Street or something created after the books, and there was originally a business.
Yeah, created just to receive the fan mail people were sending. All right, we're about 7 minutes over, so I think it's about time to wrap this up. You guys got any last minute things you want to get out of your system?
That was a good conversation.
All right, well, then I'll wrap it up. I'll thank you, Sid P. and Tangelo and Darth Fenrir for joining me. Thanks to everyone in the chat. We had a good amount of chat over here on YouTube, INVU, Master, Rainbow, all of those. No one chatted on Odyssey, even though we had a couple of viewers, but thanks to everyone who watched. Of course, please leave a comment, hit like, subscribe. Donate.pagosity.tv is where you go if you want to keep this shindig going. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay